Welcome to my show, simply entitled Women Influencers.
I am Veronica CCIM, founder and CEO of Capstack Commercial, a commercial real estate company serving the greater Orlando area. Today's guest is Dr. Laurel Mellin, founder and creator of EBT, Emotional Brain Training. Her story is one you cannot miss. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe below. I welcome your comments and please share with someone who can benefit from this podcast.
Good afternoon, Dr. Mellin. How are you today?
Wonderful. Happy to be here, Veronica.
Well, I'm so happy that you're here because you have so much to share with us today. But I wanted to jump right in, if you don't mind, and ask you if you could share about your story. I would love for the audience to hear that. So how did you grow up in your environment?
Wow.
And how you got to where you are today?
I will tell you my story, but it's not all peachy keen. There's an ups and downs to it. So I guess I was raised with an intact family, mom and dad, and lived a pretty normal life. Went to UC Berkeley undergraduate, and I married my childhood sweetheart. I met him when I was 15. I decided to go through Berkeley in 3 years instead of 4 because he was finishing his MBA, and those were the days. So I went through undergraduate in 3 years. We got married at 21. We had a baby at 20. I had a baby at 23, and the baby died. And I was changed remarkably because I was told I couldn't have children, and also because the birth was so dangerous. I was cut from my belly button down, and I was scarred badly. And that was 23. And so at that, I had thought I was going to grow up and have 4 children and be happily married, and none of that was happening. So I went back to graduate school in nutrition, became a nutritionist, and around about age 26, I got a wonderful opportunity to be a professor at the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine. They were really stuck with me because they had to have a nutrition faculty member for their NIH grant. They really didn't know what to do with this person. And I was in the middle of trying to find the root causes of obesity, so there could be a natural cure for obesity. And I had been doing that for a year or so. And I decided, well, I'm going to spend all my time doing it. So I switched gears to saying, I'm not going to have children. And I immediately, about 6 months into the job, I get pregnant.
Oh, how wonderful.
And of course, I have to go on bed rest. So, you know how everything's perfect. I wrote my first book on bed rest because what do you do when you have to spend 6 months in bed?
I guess for you, it's writing a book. Oh,
well, might as well. So that was the start of writing books. And I guess what happened was I'm a scientist. And so I knew that the cognitive behavioral methods that are still used today, other than weight loss drugs, which have their own sad story, were not working. I could see it in the research, even though everyone says, well, cognitive behavior, well, it doesn't really work because it doesn't work in the long term, and it only works for a specific behavior. It's not generalized. So I went down in the library at UCSF, and I found this old study from 1940 by a woman named Hilda Brooke, who was a psychiatrist, about 90 pounds, sopping wet. And she had studied the obesity in children, because obesity in children is also related to obesity in adults, right?
Yeah.
Same patterns. And they said that the family was not connecting. Emotional connectivity was missing. The parents were either permissive or depriving or essentially in some way missed the boat of giving that child the resiliency tools needed. And so I was a young woman. I guess I'm now 75. I was 28.
Wow, you look fantastic. Wow.
Thank you. So what happened is I just said, well, you can teach emotional connectivity tools. And so I sort of trotted across the street from the library to the clinic building. And I said, okay, we're going to teach these. Well, what happened was it was magical. And the mothers would come to me because it was a family approach. Everybody learned these skills. It was called the Shapedown Program. And what happened was the parents this mother came to me one day and said, guess what? She says, my daughter, who's been binge eating, stealing money from my purse to get sugar, now she doesn't have any interest in the food. She wants to go out and play, and she's happy. Whatever you're doing for her, you need to do for me. So that's the main story, is that at that point, I realized I would be a bad person if I didn't devote my professional career to what would become emotional brain training, EBT, We moved it right in for adults. We moved it from obesity, which is still the only program other than weight loss surgery that's proven to work in the long term, to any kind of program. And then the rest went from there. So that was the beginning stories.
Oh, how amazing is that? Now, I know from reading up on your bio that you're a two-time New York Times best-selling author. Now, when did you write your second, third, fourth, and fifth books?
Well, what I did is after that, I realized that we had so much interest in emotional brain training. It was called The Solution at the time, that I went underground and started really doing the deeper research, which has taken quite a long time because the tools that we used at first were really good for the times, which were back there in the 80s and 90s. But what happened in the United States and worldwide is there's now a pandemic of stress. And so even the emotional tools we're using, because thoughts and mindfulness do not work for the stress levels today. They only work for the worried well. But none of us are completely just the worried well. We all have some of those, those stronger circuits, those trauma circuits in the bottom of our brain. And so we completely reshaped it so that we can rewire trauma without a therapist. And rewire addiction without a therapist. Now, you'd still have to have, someone who's leading you, and they're typically health professionals who are therapists, but much more of an emphasis on empowering the individual to change their own brain so that biochemically they don't have the drives for whether it's anxiety or depression or, alcohol, or of course, food's the number one in the United States. So that work went on for quite a long time, including training health professionals. And I believe at the time, about 500,000 people have gone through EBT. And right now it's just primed and teed up for it to be essentially a new paradigm in healthcare, because we put in the research, and I mean, it has been painful, so that when people use the tools on our app, you have to be in a group because you have to have loving connection to others. That's why therapy can be very effective, because someone is listening to you.
Yeah.
Now, the average person has about 4 of these trauma circuits in their brain. And if you had to have a therapist for every one, it would never happen. So what EBT does is give people a way to take charge of their own brain history. So to revise it so they clear away some of those circuits that make them not as happy as they could be, not as productive as they could be.
Wow, that sounds pretty amazing and truly appropriate for what's happening in the United States right now. I mean, obesity is, I think, like the number one disease, I think, that affects a lot of young and old and any age, really. So, what a great segue to the question I'm going to ask you next about challenges and how you overcame challenges. Now, if you could pick just one challenge that you overcame,
I will. I will tell you that with joy. I will say that on the day I was born, I realized that I had some passion, but I had no idea that I would need a lot more passion than I could drum up. Because when I discovered emotional brain training, the actual neuroscientific method was discovered in 2007. We realized that we were rewiring the emotional brain. Now, just to be really clear now, the emotional brain is in charge of physiology. That means it's medicine. It's in charge of emotions, thoughts, behaviors, the circuits, whatever circuits happen to be landed in your brain and stored there, get reactivated for a lifetime. And so what we're doing is saying, when you don't like how you feel, you're stressed or you're acting some way, don't blame yourself. It's a circuit. Use the EBT app in a small group. So you have to have that loving support, and rewire that circuit, and it's gone. Well, this is not good news, because the same circuits are the focus of psychotherapy, except EBT is a direct approach that empowers people to take charge of their own lives.
I see.
It's also the circuits that are underneath chronic diseases, such as diabetes. And it's also what gets in the way of, essentially, when you rewire these circuits, you change your biochemistry naturally and don't need as many medications. So I'll tell you a funny story. So I love EBT, and I love running these groups because everybody's rewiring their circuits, and I rewired my anxiety circuit, I rewired my food circuit. So it's very fun and very powerful, even though it's extremely deep. And so this one woman came up to me, she says, someday you should sell EBT. And I said, maybe I would sell it someday. And she said, but you know what's going to happen? You know who's going to buy it? The drug companies. And what they're going to do is they're going to find that they need more research on EBT. And so they're going to sequester it for decades. because, because you can change your own biochemistry, because we're rewiring the stress response that turns off on all this, the circuits and the chemicals that are self-damaging.
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty deep stuff there. I wanted to ask you about influence, and if there was one outcome that you're most proud of because you've influenced that outcome, what would that be?
I would say the outcome that I'm most proud of, other than my 3 children, you know, you got to say, you know, kids matter, because I did go on to have 3 children who are now
Wow, that's
doing their
amazing. That's
lives. Yeah,
amazing.
right. Is what I felt a lot of shame about my problems. I felt a lot of shame about my binge eating. I felt a lot of shame about my depression. And once we moved EBT to understanding that biophysiologically, these problems are just circuits, emotional circuits in the emotional brain. And until there was emotional brain training, there was no way for regular, ordinary people to be able to change those circuits. So they lived with a feeling of, what's wrong with me anyway? Why is nothing really working? And so my my biggest, what I'm most proud of is that I hope I leave this world with actually 2 things. One, people knowing that they have no problems. They just have circuits, and who taught them that and who taught them this basic neuroscience that they can rewire them. And also the beauty of rewiring these circuits with these emotional brain training skills is that whatever skill you use, and there are just 5 of them that you learn, they always lead to one state, which is called neural integration in medicine. But to you and me, it's called joy. So, so I want people around the world to wake up in the morning and say, what am I doing with my life anyway? And they've got all these things they have to do. And they say, what I'm really doing with my life is I'm creating joy today.
Wow.
And the more I create that joy by using these skills to clear those circuits from the past, so they have freedom from the past, the happier they're going to be and the healthier they'll be. So I would say it's creating joy.
Oh, I love it. You know, I'm a big believer of joy, and everything that I do is really just a fraction or an element of how I can get to joy. And I love what you just said, which brings me to the question, if you had one piece of advice for our audience, what would that be?
It would be to appreciate that you truly have an opportunity of making a major shift in your life, because right now the stress levels are so high that the old way that we process life, which was with the thinking brain, is no longer working. And instead, we need to downshift to letting the emotional brain be our best friend and learn how to process emotions in these very simple ways that I first taught children. And if you do that, if you say, I'm in the age of the emotional brain, there's so much stress now that the emotional brain's in charge. And so what I'm going to do is appreciate that if I just learn how to process my emotions using this simple system, that I won't have any problems. And let me tell you why. Because when you're in stress, the problem is that circuit. Let's say I'm anxious, or I'm procrastinating, or I'm judging myself, and I say, I don't like that. It doesn't feel good. It's just a circuit. And so I switch it off using my app with my group for support, and I spiral up to 1. And when I'm at brain state 1, which is the top of the brain, see, the bottom of the brain in stress is 3, 4, and 5 areas. Down with the reptilian brain, the top of the brain is joy, which is brain state 1. I spiral up to 1, and totally, I have no problems, because I'm actually activating the healthiest part of my brain, and it has all these happy memories. So essentially, you have no real problems. You just have stress, which is causing circuits to be activated, and all you have to do is shut them off and rewire them.
Oh, amazing. I love it. I really love it. Well, we've come to the part of the interview where you get to ask me a question, Dr. Mellin.
Have any wire in your brain that you think EBT could help you with?
Weight.
Weight.
Yeah, because I don't know. I've always been able to maintain my weight, and you know the saying: as you grow older, you eat the same, you do the same things, but you just start putting on more weight. So So that's really the struggle that I have right now. And I've thought of the new medicines that came out. What is it, metformin, and the other one that you inject. I forget the name of those other medicines, and I've considered those. So I think that after hearing you speak about EBT, that I'm so drawn to it. I think I'll look up your app, which reminds me, which really that's the answer to your question. But how do we find you?
Oh, I'm so easy to find. The best place to go is just go to our website. Again, it's emotional brain training. It's ebt.org, just like food stamps, except with an ORG, emotional brain training. And just join in. And when you join in, you'll get everything, all the books, you'll get all the app, you'll get all the daily support, and you'll start rewiring and saying, oh my gosh, this feels so good. I also have a new book out, which is 123 Joy. And that book is for people who are interested in the science and practice of losing weight without drugs, diets, or surgery. And that's a very important point for me because, again, EBT is the only program that's actually shown lasting weight loss. The idea with drugs is this. It's really sad. So let me sort of choke up for a moment here. It's really sad. The reason that we're having the weight gain is because of stress chemicals. As we get older, we have more stress chemicals. There are 8 stress chemicals that are activated when you're in that stress response, when you're feeling just even a little bit anxious. You're actually secreting 8 chemicals, all of which make us hungry, tired, crave certain kinds of foods that make us gain weight. And then whatever we do eat goes to body fat. 8 chemicals, okay? When you turn off the stress response with EBT, all 8 chemicals begin to change, all 8 of them. And that's why there are no side effects. And because you change the circuits, the results are lasting. However, if you inject, you're only injecting one of those 8 chemicals, and you become dependent upon that. You are really torquing your body, because when you put in one out of the 8 that are out of balance, you're going to have a problem. And then you're dependent upon it, and you feel like, I can't go off it because I'm going to be out of control. The control is in your emotional brain. Just rewire those circuits and you'll find lasting results.
Well, let me tell you, I believe in therapy, and I believe that that's really something that benefits people. I've done it. I've done counseling, and it's very freeing, to be able to subject your emotions to, like you said, it's an emotional tie because you feel like somebody listened to you. So
Yes.
I totally appreciate what you just shared with us today. Dr. Mellin, I really want to thank you for being here today. Our audience, they're primarily very, very interested in other women's stories, and yours is truly a really fantastic one. So I appreciate you. And if you have some parting words, now would be the time.
Yes, I want you to know that no matter how difficult life looks, how much trauma you've had, how much adversity you've had, now we know through neuroscience that at this point you have no problems. You only have a few wires. There's not a lot of them, maybe 4, maybe 6. And so say to yourself when you wake up in the morning, I am creating joy in my life. I have no real problems. I just have a few of those wires, and I'm going to be proactive and rewire them.
Awesome. Awesome. You've been awesome, Dr. Mellin. Thank you so much for gracing our show. And I hope one day we can connect in person.
I hope so too.
Well, take care. And I will be looking for your app, and also looking at your website, ebt.org. Correct?
Yes, exactly. ebt.org.
All right. Well, take care, and we'll see you soon.